Hello and welcome to Sociology Chapter 4. This time we're continuing our conversation from Chapter 3 on culture. This time we're going to focus a little bit more on socialization. Okay, let's just do that. So socialization is really the process by which we become normal adults, right? We learn in school. If you've ever spoken with a student who grew up in another country, their rules and guidelines were different in terms of how they acted in class and when they could speak out, if they had to raise their hands. If someone grew up in Europe, it's likely they didn't take standardized tests. They likely wrote essays and they didn't staple their papers. They put a paper clip on them. And so anyway, where we grow up and instills in us the rules that help us become whatever normal is, but helps us become normal adults. We started last time talking about how much of who we are is based on genetics and how much of who we are is based on socialization, and we used IQ, excuse me, or at least IQ testing as part of our conversation. This time, I want to start with a story, a true story. 12 years ago or so, just across the border in Wisconsin, a young boy, and it was wintertime, a young boy ran several blocks at night to the police station from his home. He did so in a t-shirt, jeans, no coat, no hat, no gloves, no socks, no shoes. If you've ever been outside in the snow with no shoes on, you have a few seconds where you're okay, and then the cold kicks in and it becomes pain pretty quickly. So this young man, he was around 6 or 7 years old. He ran several blocks in the snow to the police station. And when he got there, he told them an incredible story. He told them that he had an older 10-year-old sister who lived in the basement in a dog cage. She ate out of dog bowls. She didn't wear any clothes. This wasn't a sexual thing at all. It was she didn't have any self-help skills, meaning she couldn't toilet herself appropriately. So she just went in the cage, and the family had set up a television right in front of the dog cage that she couldn't exit, but it gave her something to do. So he tells them this story. The police officers get his name and they contact his parents by telephone and say, hey, we have your son. And the parents said, oh, thank goodness, right? Oh, thank goodness. We had no idea where he was. We feared the worst. Police said, no worries, we will bring him home. So the police drive the young man home and they drop him off with both of his parents at the front door. And they're just about to leave. And one of the officers says to the parents, he says, he said, your son told us an incredible story. Your son told us that he has an older sister who lives in the basement, doesn't go to school, isn't clothed, eats out of dog bowls, and lives in a dog cage. And the parents just laughed, right? They just laughed. They said, oh my, he can really tell some tales, right? And from raising two children, I can tell you every once in a while, kids can tell you some stories when they're that age that are pretty funny. So again, the police were just about to leave, and the cop who asked the question then said, if you don't mind, can we take a look? Now look, they didn't have a warrant. They weren't going to get a warrant. But the family said, sure, come on in. Sure enough, when they go down to the basement, they find an emaciated 10-year-old girl with no self-help skills, naked in a dog cage with dog bowls to eat and drink. What are the chances, and this is the whole reason I tell the story, what are the chances she will ever be normal? Well, we like to say things like, well, between slim and none, not very likely. No, there's no chance she's going to become normal. As a matter of fact, if you follow the story at all, she does live in a group home today, so she does have some self-help skills, but she's always going to be on taxpayer money, right? She's always going to be in subsidized housing. She's always going to have 24-hour assistance. And my point in saying all of that is when there is severe abuse and neglect, then you can throw everything out about genetics and everything else, because now the unsocialization has taken over. George Herbert Mead, I'm just jumping quickly. George Herbert Mead said that we learn by imitating the actions of others, right? I think there's an awful lot to be said for this. I think we do learn by watching the actions of others. I mean, when we talked about pre-industrial societies, when we talk about agrarian societies, most children then learn from watching their parents, and then they just simply imitated what they saw. Cooley came along right after Mead, and Cooley said to us, he talked about the looking glass self, right? And the looking glass self says, and you might want to write this down, but the looking glass self says that we get our sense of who we are based on our perception of what others think about us, right? We get our sense of who we are based on our perception of what others think about us. And what that really means is our sense of self oftentimes is external, particularly when we're younger. I mean, look, I'm a little bit older now. I'm still striving. There's things in my life I'm still trying to improve all across the board. So I haven't accepted myself yet, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I want to be a better person. I'm sure everybody watching this video wants to be a better person. It's usually not until we're significantly older that when we just figure out, you know what, this is who I am, this is how it is. Let me give you an example. You know there's a paper due in this class, and many of you are procrastinators. And you may have thought to yourself, I am a procrastinator, but you know what? This time I'm not going to wait till the last second. This time I'm going to get started early so I don't get that flop sweat at the last minute when I'm looking at the clock and typing at the same time. See, someone who's older, who's a procrastinator, would say to themselves, you know what, I'm not even going to worry about it until the last minute because that's when I write all my papers, right? So anyway, you get just to give you some sense of that. Many of you have studied Jean Piaget before, and his theories on child development. We're going to talk about his 4 developmental stages. I will tell you, if you've had this in psychology or elementary ed, it's the same thing in sociology when we talk about Piaget as it is in the others. So I want you to know a couple things. I want you to know what each of the 4 stages are, and I want you to know the approximate, because they are approximate, but I want you to know the approximate ages when in normal development we pass through these stages. And again, when I say normal development, I mean there was not, this severe abuse and neglect, because that kind of stops things. The first stage we go through is called sensory motor stage. It's from about birth to 2. And I will tell you, you lose your mind when you find out you're having a child. The mother of my children and I, we lost our minds, intelligent people who absolutely lost our minds. We decided, I don't know why, we decided that it would be best if the baby in the womb listened to Celtic music. And by the way, if you can listen to Celtic music for more than 3 minutes and be awake, you are a better person than I am. I mean, so part of our thinking was this will be calming. You know what we didn't think about? We didn't think about the layers of placenta and everything else that sound would go through and how muffled it would be when it got there. But anyway, having said all of that, if you want to say that the sensory motor stage starts before birth, I'll support you on that. I won't ask you a question to challenge that. But it goes from about birth to 2. There are so many stages. There are so many things that happen within this particular stage. I'll give you an example. You will never, and you may have friends that you wonder about, but you will never be more egocentric than you were when you were an infant. Look, to a 2-week-old infant, the entire universe is everything that they can see and touch and hear, period. Period. If they can't see it, doesn't exist. So at 2 weeks old, when mom leaves the room, where'd she go? Poof, doesn't exist. Would it be cool if you could do that now, right? Are there a couple people that you would like to never have to deal with ever again. Sorry, doesn't work that way after we get out of that stage. It is so interesting watching children when they learn to crawl, right? So most children, when they crawl backwards because it's easier to push off with their arms than it is to pull themselves forward. That takes more strength. So I still remember watching my daughter go the wrong way when she was crawling. You could see a little bit of the frustration where she's, why am I going backwards? Where am I, where am I going? But crawling, it's an interesting thing to watch. Many of you have seen a child figure out that they have a foot. And when they do figure out they have a foot, where's the first place it goes? Yeah, you know this. It goes right in their mouth, right? That's just how that's how infants experience the world, right? Which is why we have to be careful what kind of toys that they have. You don't want small parts that they can ingest. So the sensory motor stage is really about that child learning about the environment, learning, that they have hands and feet and they need to sleep and eat and all these kinds of things. There's also a period that I started to talk about in there called object permanence. And what object permanence means is that a child recognizes that their favorite toy continues to exist, even if they can't see it. Now, I'll give you a great question. When a child loses her or his favorite toy, where do they look for it? I just absolutely love this. It's brilliant. They look for it the last place they found it, right? I mean, have you ever had a roommate or sibling or someone who's lost their keys and you're trying to help them find them and you want to ask, well, where'd you leave them, right? Because if they knew where they left them, they would just go get them. But if they've left them in their coat pocket before, maybe that's a good place to go look. So anyway, maybe there's some brilliance. Maybe there's some brilliance that's in there. But think about it. Moms do a pretty good job of cleaning up. Dads not so much. Sorry about that, guys. But moms do a really nice job often, and some dads do, of picking up. But when mom picks up, doesn't it make sense that the baby doesn't try to look for it where they think they lost it? Because if you've ever watched an infant playing with a toy and something catches their eye, they just drop whatever is in their hand and they're on to the next thing. So they're not going to have a memory of that. I just love the idea that they look for it the last place that they found it. I just think that is the coolest thing. Around the age of a year and a half or 2 years old, once children start speaking in 2 and 3 word sentences, they move into the pre-operational stage. Pre-operational stage is from about 2 until 7. This is the stage where we learn language, right? This is the age when you can learn as many languages as you want and not have an accent in any of them, right? So I'm sure several people watching this video are bilingual, right? And you can probably speak at least 2 languages without an accent. Everyone right now can learn a new language. Say you decide, you know what, I'm going to do the Johnny Depp thing. I'm going to learn French and I'm going to move to Paris. And you do that and you live in Paris for 50 years. I can guarantee you what's going to happen 50 years from now. You're going to walk down the street and you've done nothing but speak French for 50 years. You're going to walk down the street and talk with someone and they're going to say, United States, right? Or États-Unis, right? So the person's going to recognize that you still have an accent because you learned language at 18, 19, 20 rather than between 2 and 7. So this is the thing that we learn during this particular stage is language. And this is also the age where children will say, and this can seem annoying, so I want you to back up and just think about what's happening. Children will say the same thing to you 3 different ways. And you might be thinking to yourself, what's wrong with you? Why are you telling me the same thing 3 different ways? They're trying to figure out grammar. They don't recognize that, but they're trying to find the right way to say what they're trying to say. It's incumbent on us as parents and adults and siblings. It's incumbent on us to correct the child, right? So that they can learn the appropriate way to say it. Let me also say there is a word called motherese, mother ese, motherese, and motherese is present in every culture, and it seems to be an instinct. It isn't, but it seems to be an instinct that when moms or when families talk to children, they emphasize the sounds in that language that are most similar. So in the English language, it's B and D. So if you find yourself spelling something so that someone knows, you might say B is in boy, D is in David, right? Because B and D are similar sounds in the English language. And so motherese, mothers will enunciate those two sounds to help the child differentiate. I'll tell you what's interesting with that. It doesn't really seem to help with language, right? I mean, it kind of happens across the globe, but it really doesn't seem to help. And the reason I say that is I want you to understand it's not the style of interaction with young people that is important. It is the amount of interaction that is more important, right? So, what's more important than how we communicate with children is how much we communicate with children. The more we communicate with children, the better their vocabulary is going to be, the better their English skills or whatever language skills are going to be. But all of those things happen during this particular stage. So, if we were to go to a 5-year-old and we were to draw two glasses on the board, and let's say we drew them in such a way that they both would hold 8 ounces of water, assuming they were real. But one is taller and thinner, and the other one is shorter and chubbier for a glass. And you ask the child which glass is bigger, and they will always say, well, the taller one, right? And to a child of 5, bigger is better, right? So if you present them with the same toy, the Buzz Lightyear action figure, and one's bigger than the other one, most of the time they're going to choose the larger toy to play with, which is actually kind of interesting. So between 2 and 7, we focus on language. Between 7 and 11 or 12, we move into what's called concrete operational stage. This is when we start learning. This is when we start learning rules. So this is when we learn the concept of volume, so that we can see two 8-ounce glasses that are different shapes, and we can figure out that they're the same size. This is the age where children can drive you bonkers, right? This is why is the sky blue, right? And they're not asking, they don't want you to say something like, well, there's two competing theories on that. No, right? Give me the answer. This is the black and white stage, right? The concrete operational, it's called concrete because everything is good or bad, yes or no. It's the concrete operational stage, and so children want answers during this particular stage. It's a really helpful stage because we start to learn math and equations and all these other things which are really helpful to us. But children at this age don't understand anything that's gray, right? So years ago, when my children were during this particular stage, and I was driving who knows where, and both kids are in the back, and there had apparently been, I had the radio on, there had apparently been a story of a father in North Chicago who had killed his daughter and her best friend. It turned out that that's not what happened, but that was the story on the news that day. I didn't even pay attention to it, right? Music came on. My daughter, 5 or 10 minutes later, says to me from the backseat, she said, daddies love their daughters, right? And I said, well, of course they do. And she said, well, if daddies love their daughters, why did that daddy kill his daughter, right? I mean, so she was really trying to grasp the gray, but her concrete mind wouldn't let her do it. I mean, you can say it as many times as you want. Well, sometimes good people do bad things, and sometimes bad people do good things. I don't want to say you're wasting your time when you're doing that with an 8 or 9-year-old, but you're probably wasting your time with that. So this is something that we start to pick up when we get a little bit older. At around the age of 12, half of us move into the formal operational stage. The formal operational stage means that we have the ability to think abstractly. And what that means is we are able to imagine the world differently than it's currently constructed. We can imagine the world to be different. So people who think abstractly start thoughts with, hey, what if, right? What if we, and then fill in the blank. They're imagining the world differently. I will say this, we need people who are concrete thinkers. And I'll give you an example. I use this example because I get to use the word commission this way that I never get to use it this way in any other setting. If I were to commission someone to build a bridge, right? How often do you get to say that? But if I were to commission someone to build a bridge, I tell you what I don't want to hear. I don't want to hear, I have a great idea. Nobody's ever built a bridge like this before, but you're going to love it. No, no, no. I tell you what I want to hear. I want somebody to say, I've built 30 bridges. They're all standing. I build them all the same. Sold, right? I mean, I want the person who knows what they're doing and they just do it. So we need both. We need concrete thinkers in this world, and we also need formal operational thinkers, people who think abstractly in this world. So this is the point where Piaget passed away, right? So, and let me also say this about Piaget. This is just interesting. He learned about his 4 developmental stages by watching children play. How interesting is that, right? He was very interested in what are the rules that children use at different stages. Remember, we talked about Alfred Binet was interested in mental age. So he wanted to know what children knew at different ages. This is slightly different. This is Piaget wanted to know what are the rules that children live by at different ages. So very, very interesting stuff. He gave us the 4 developmental stages. And like I say, passed away. And there have been others who have come along and they've given us a 5th stage and a 6th stage. And some people agree and some people don't. The criticism is people say, well, you're not Piaget, right? So having lived for a while, I think it's clear that there are additional stages after formal operational. And someday we'll probably all agree on what those stages are. But for right now, it's a little bit of controversy. I hope you enjoyed chapter 4, and I hope you have a great day.